Hi, my name is Bryndis Whitson, and you're listening to Zebras to Apples, the fun and fascinating stories of supply chain logistics. I'm here with Rajbir Bhatti, who is a professor of supply chain at Mount Royal University, and we will be talking about many different topics, and we'll just start right into it. So thank you for being here, Raj.
Thank you for having Bryndis. How are you today?
Really good. That's the thing I've loved so far about putting the 11 episodes is almost every single person, I think every person I've interviewed has been a friend and someone that I've had, has a lot of passion for the industry, and that's exactly what this is all about too. So,
Thank you, Bryndis. I feel honored.
mhm. So tell me a little bit about your background, your career history, and what led you to Mount Royal and everything in between.
Okay, let's go all the way back to a small province in the north of India called
Mm-hmm.
Punjab. That's where the Sikh community is mostly. And I was sent to a Roman Catholic school.
Hmm.
So the first 16 years of my education was in a Roman Catholic school, just the way the school education system in India is set up. The Catholic educational system is they provide the best education, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to date. And then I was a sports person as well. I mean,
Hmm.
academics has been, of course, front and center just because my father is a retired professor of physics now. He served at the university there.
Oh, okay.
And my mom, she was a librarian with multiple master's degrees, one in political science, one in economics, and she finally decided to do a master's in library and information science. So you can see
Wow.
the academics running there.
Hmm.
But I was also a sports person. 200 meters and 400 meters were my two pet,
Hmm.
events.
Really?
And I was also on the cricket team for
Yeah.
this. In that part of the world, cricket is pretty much religion, if you will. So grew up in a very open-minded society, economy, family. And then, in India, as some of your listeners would know, uh, the choices for young kids are either you want to become a doctor or an engineer
Hmm.
or a lawyer or something of that sort. And then
Exactly.
those limited options and everything else was, at least in those days, considered to be out of scope.
Hmm.
So my brother, because he was a medical doctor, and I saw how hard his life was, I kind of chickened out, and I said, okay, I don't want to get into med school, and I want to get into engineering. So
Hmm.
my
Okay.
first degree was in mechanical engineering,
Hmm.
and I'd always thought of being that mechanical engineer who would sort of work with machines and do all the fantastic things, which I never could.
Hmm.
And then my master's was also in mechanical engineering. In fact, that is
Hmm.
where I found my love for supply chains.
Hmm.
So when I went to do my PhD from the Indian Institute of Technology, there's a little joke about the Indian Institutes of Technology. They say, don't worry if you cannot get into one of them, you still have Harvard to fall back on because yeah, the acceptance rate is 2%.
Wow.
And Harvard is, I guess, 9 or 10%. So
Hmm.
that's that little joke there.
Yeah.
Lucky enough, I could get into the PhD program. And that is around the time, Brindis, when I sort of started dabbling with, if you will, into supply chains because those days, early 2000s, supply chain was mostly, at least in India those days, seen to be a management oriented approach to
Hmm.
things. And the engineer that I was, I was always thinking, but there must be a lot of freight movement, weight, volume, density, optimization can be done. So,
Oh, yeah.
how about marrying the two seemingly disparate concepts of engineering and supply chain management? So, my entire PhD thesis was in the area of optimizing supply chains,
Right.
and that is when supply chains were just seen to be management fields.
Totally. And you can actually, the mechanical engineering kind of background adding into the supply chain, you can really see the systems
thinking.
fully in a fully different concept.
And that's right. You remind me of systems dynamics as we used to, study it those days. A concept given by Forrester at MIT in the mid 70s, late 70s. He initially called it industrial dynamics, but later we realized that concept of system dynamics can be applied to anything. So they
Hmm.
renamed it from industrial to systems dynamics. And I had that early advantage, I must admit, that being an engineer and someone who loved numbers and data and optimization, when I looked
Hmm.
at supply chains, I saw a huge opportunity that catapulted me, if you will, into this
Yeah.
world of supply
Oh, it
chain.
would. It really, really would.
It worked. It
Yeah.
did.
So, so after you got your PhD, what happened next? Or what was, and actually, tell me before we go into that, what was your thesis?
So my thesis was in the optimization of relationships in supplier selection.
Hmm.
So think about it, right? We always have vendors being rated on a 1 to 5, 1 to 9 scale.
Okay.
A vendor can on various KPIs, people still look at, how would you rate this vendor on such and such thing? And we would say either a 4 or a 5 or a 3 or something like that.
Hmm.
And my thesis to my supervisor those days was it's a relationship. How can you
Yeah.
discretely quantify that on a scale?
Hmm.
Either select a 4 or the next best option is a 5.
Right.
And between two numbers, there are infinite numbers.
Hmm.
So can it be 4.1, 4.1.1, 4.1.1.1, and so on and so forth, right? You got infinite choices between any two numbers.
Hmm.
So my entire thesis was that this entire relationship evaluation, performance evaluation is not discrete and it should be treated like a fuzzy problem. So I use fuzzy logic, fuzzy sets, fuzzy mathematics to transform linguistic inputs uh,
Okay.
and fuzzy modeling using multiple criteria decision making and all of those fancy tools.
Yeah.
And those days, I mean, this was kind of new, Bryndis, in this world that people had not sort of dabbled into this question, if you will.
Hmm.
And the discrete models with good, bad, ugly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of responses versus the fuzzy models that we made, they had diametrically different results.
Oh, right. They would. Yeah.
So we were convinced that human relations and quality, performance, these are things that you need to look at from a different lens. And so my entire thesis was on the 3PL relationship selection process and also on the concept of 4PL. Is there a 4PL? Who is a 4PL?
Hmm.
How to qualify to be, considered to be a 4PL?
Right.
And the other piece was the 4PL is somebody who claims to be at a higher level in the hierarchy of things, if you will, and has the ability to integrate
Hmm.
multiple 3PLs that an organization might have.
Exactly. And just before we get into a little bit more questions that are coming, sparking in my thought, and a 3PL, just for the two of us are kind of fully aware what a 3PL is, but not everyone is. And what is a 3PL?
That's a good question. So a 3PL is a third party logistics service
Hmm.
provider, right? So
Right.
initially, when the concept of outsourcing was sort of still new to the world, one of the things that was very clear to us was that there are two parties in a contractual
Hmm.
relationship. There is the first party and the second party.
Yeah.
Somebody who has a product or a service and somebody who needs the product or the service.
Hmm.
Now, the third party, therefore, we realized is somebody who doesn't have to be the first or the second, but can assist the relationship between the first and the second by virtue of the fact that this party has some unique value proposition that
Hmm.
they can bring to the conversation.
Yeah.
So initially, it was those transportation companies. So let's say if I make widgets, I'm good at making widgets.
Hmm.
Why should I be bothered about, maintaining a fleet of trucks and moving and ensuring stuff moves from where to where, etc. So we said, okay, you know what? If there's a trucking company that has an expertise in transportation, they know how to manage weight, volume,
Yeah.
route, densities, and all. So why not just outsource it to them? So they became the third party in the
Right.
logistics environment. So therefore, you have the 3PL. The L in that is the logistics. But eventually, what happened? Everybody started classifying themselves as a 3PL if they were an outsourcing agent. So
Mm-hmm.
whether you are an accounting firm and I outsource a part of my work to you, we would still, synonymously call you a 3PL.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah,
then
it would be.
janitorial and secretarial, anything that an organization outsources, we started calling them 3PLs.
Huh. I didn't even, so from that's really kind of neat because I never would have thought of an accounting firm or a janitorial company or anything like that as a 3PL as well, but it totally is because you're outsourcing to someone who specifically is trained in that area. Yeah. The other thing I really love, talk about that difference in the 3PL is the things that I would kind of showcase for some of my clients is when you're at a 3PL, you can actually fully specific be targeted for just the logistics of it. It doesn't mean, and it could be any type of product because you're the expert in housing or doing whatever in that field, as opposed to someone another company who does products and all makes widgets and houses the widgets too.
Right? And think about
Yeah.
it like this. Over a period of time, there are many, many such examples, Bryndis, in
Mm-hmm.
business where the name of the company or the organization that first came up with a particular concept got stuck with or sort of started being used for the process or the service that they were providing.
Right.
Think about, let's say, for example, Google.
Mm.
Now,
Yeah.
Google is the name of a company or, subsequently Alphabet and so on and so forth. But what would it do? It would help you search.
Mm-hmm.
So what did finally eventually end up happening? The process of searching something on the internet started being called as, can you Google this?
Yeah. It became the full, it wasn't, can you ask Jeeves this? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Similarly, ChatGPT is one platform. Then more and more people, whenever they use LLMs, whether Gemini or Copilot or anything else, we just say, let's ChatGPT it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what happened to the 3PL name as well. The
Right.
It started with the logistics firms, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the L. But now anything we outsource, we just sometimes call it as a third party relationship.
Okay. And then the difference between the 3PL and the 4PL.
Now, the 4PL, so going back a step, 3PL, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a core competency, I don't want to do it myself. So I'm the first or the second party. I outsource it to somebody else and can you move these goods for me? But now we started having more and more outsourcing relationships, from
Mm-hmm.
transportation to warehousing to distribution to custom brokers and hiring, firing, janitorial, this, that. You organizations started having dozens of 3PL relationships.
Oh yeah.
And it became a task in itself to manage those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So that is when Accenture in 1996, around that time, they came up with the idea, well, if you have so many 3PL relationships and you don't want to get bogged down in managing all of these relationships, think of us. We are one step ahead, higher on all of those 3PLs. So,
Mm-hmm.
and they coined this term of a 4PL, a fourth party logistics service provider.
Oh, okay.
Think of a 4PL as a very large 3PL,
Yeah.
and you don't have to work directly with all the 3PLs, just work with one of them
Mm.
and say, big 3PL, the 4PL of the future, you manage all of the other relationships.
Okay. So you do all of the above and more.
So somebody got created, another layer got created between the first party and the third party,
Mm-hmm.
and they inserted themselves. Although there has been a debate about, is there a real 4PL?
Oh yeah.
Who is a 4PL? I mean, is a 4PL a very large asset free 3PL or something
Mm-hmm.
like that?
Oh
So
yeah.
that has been under debate for quite a while. So my thesis, back to the first question, was,
Mm-hmm.
who is a 4PL, and how do you select a 4PL, and how does the 4PL relationship with the 3PLs work, and how do you as an organization ensure that the vision that you have about quality, about delivery, about price is shared between the 4PL and the 3PL, and how do you measure this? I mean, this is very
Mm-hmm.
subjective.
Right.
So that measurement of whether we are aligned or not required some sort of modeling. So we use mathematical models to optimize and manage and
Mm.
quantify that entire relationship between a 4PL and a 3PL and the first party. So we had a quite a you know fun time playing in that space, marrying hardcore data analytics optimization with the so-called soft stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we had good success, I would say, in those early 2000s.
Yeah.
And in the last 25 years, a lot of work in this direction has been done. And we've seen how supply chains are pretty much like organisms. They breathe, they think, they grow, they decay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to manage these relationships pretty much like you would plant a flower or a vegetable in your garden, and you would take care of it.
Exactly. And some things are annuals and some things are perennials. Yeah.
You're already in spring in Calgary.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too that I really think is interesting is someone who is more of a person who, when it comes to KPIs or key performance indicators, has a lot more on that kind of non-quantitative. I have a lot of qualitative pieces, and it's always that balance of, it's easy to quantify some things, but people's feelings or emotions are harder to quantify, and they're more of a quality. And so I think that it's really kind of interesting of a discussion.
Yeah, I loved my time during the PhD because I had expertise or interest, I would say,
Hmm.
in data analytics in those days. But then using it for a very different, till that time,
Yeah.
soft skills, subjective supply
Hmm.
chain. Wedding of the two was an interesting thing that we explored. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So, yeah, where'd you go next?
Oh, we loved the work. I had successful publications in great journals,
Hmm.
published a book as well. Started off with a new journal where I could bring to, thought leaders from multiple countries, multiple dimensions. And so we started with the International Journal of Applied Industrial Engineering from Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And then I also taught at the universities in India for some time before I moved to Winnipeg and worked with the Asper School of Business
Okay.
in the Department of Supply Chain Management. I enjoyed my teaching there. And around the same time, talking to Dr. Marcy Elliott, who was the dean of the MBA program,
Mm.
we realized that we don't have a concentration, if you will, in the MBA program in supply chain management. So
Right.
worked with the team at the Esper School to develop some new courses, teach them. I mean, if you're Winnipeg and you are at the intersection of the main trade corridors,
Hmm.
definitely the MBA program in one of the leading universities there should have a dedicated supply chain focus. So worked with, stalwarts like Dr. Barry Prentice
Hmm.
and Arson, and I totally enjoyed my work there before I moved to Mount Royal University here in Canada.
Right before we talk about that switch, since we're talking about the University of Manitoba, because there's the Transport Institute there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So the Transport Institute is an exceptional, community-facing, research-facing entity that they have at the University of Manitoba.
Hmm.
And Barry has been the director of that institute for very, very long. I did get to work with Terry Duguid, while
Mm.
he worked with
Yeah.
the University of Winnipeg, leading a transportation initiative for sustainable transportation solutions for the North.
Oh.
So the Transport Institute and my networks there,
Hmm.
I really enjoyed working. It was an exceptional opportunity in learning, I must say.
Right.
Coming from India, I had only bookish knowledge about permafrost. I knew what is
Hmm.
permafrost, but what does it do to supply chain management
Yes.
and the challenges of transportation? How do you build a road on permafrost and knowing fully well that come summer this road is going to go away? Say $400,000 that you invest in per kilometers of road, all of that is going to go away.
Hmm.
So, what are
Yeah.
the challenges of moving goods to the north? When I learned that, it was quite an experience in humility, I must say.
Yeah. It really would because there is such a difference in that kind of area.
Right,
And logistics in the north is a whole other conversation that will, yeah, because there's so much that has to be factored in that process, exactly like you were saying,
right.
Frilly.
And Barry Prentice, Dr. Barry Prentice has been forever, has been an airships person. He has
Hmm.
always espoused the cause for airships.
Yeah.
And he sincerely believes in this. He has designed some, and he works with experts around the world, as you know, in the area of airships.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to work in his team to explore how sustainability transportation issues for the north are so critical, and what
Yeah.
type of solutions do we have, and if airships is the solution. Barry feels they are.
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly how I got introduced to logistics in the North, other than the Northern Transportation Conference that the Van Horn Institute we hosted in Alaska
Right.
in 2011. But that was September of 2011. And then in December of 2011, we hosted a conference in Seattle with Barry. And
There you go.
yeah, in icy polar, and it's all about airships and airships to the north. And but we had it was a very wide cross section of people for that conversation, and we really like the converse. The all of those pieces were very very fascinating. So that we brought in that kind of area. So
Absolutely, Brindis.
yeah.
Airships have a huge potential,
Hmm.
uh, although the velocity is slow, and if there is cargo that can wait, that
Yeah.
doesn't require to be shipped overnight.
Yeah.
Why not? So
Yeah.
airships have a huge value proposition in the entire scheme of things for supply chain management.
Exactly. One of the things that, one of the people speaking was talking about at the conference was they got a phone call saying, "Is your airship ready to go?" And he's like, "No, sorry, not yet." But it's almost there, but we don't want to, we're we're still testing it. And they said, "Oh, that's too bad because a container ship has gone down, and the only way we can think to take off the containers is by airship."
There you go.
Because of the payload capacity that you could actually have to actually be able to safely, actually take everything off of there too. So,
And think about it like this, Prentice. The north is frozen, agreed, but it is also melting of the snows has
hmm.
been happening for quite a while, right? So one day, whether it is 25 years or 50 years, we can debate on the time, the snows will melt.
Yeah.
And what is the shortest route, if you will, from Canada into China, let's say?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, there's a huge opportunity with the, let's say, the port in Churchill.
Hmm. Yeah.
Barry has been, working on this for a long, long time. In certain respects, there is that angle of security as well, national security as well, that sort of kicks in with the
Yeah.
melting of the snows. And
Totally.
as many of your listeners would surely know, we have a CN line that goes all the way to the bar.
Yeah.
And from the
Oh,
bar,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there is an HBR line that goes to Churchill.
Yes.
Now, for want of traffic and oblique or for reasons related to maintenance and gradient of the railway line, that line has not been fully utilized in the last many, many, many decades. And that is another interesting conversation that we used to have when I was in Manitoba with Barry, saying, well, CN has a huge set of asset, if you will, infrastructure,
Hmm.
and using the port in Churchill with all its limitations and challenges, we agreed we can work on that direction. Churchill has the advantage of connecting us with Europe, and see what's happening these days with the north-south traffic and trade. We are looking for connecting ourselves to Europe, and maybe Churchill has that solution for us, which Barry has been espousing for a long, long time.
I think Churchill really could. And in case the lovely people at Astronomic Audio aren't able to kind of cut it out, occasionally you might hear my cat meowing in the background, or two of them.
Well, I saw you cat, yeah,
Yeah,
briefly.
that just in case. I think with the Port of Churchill, like I remember too when there was the really big rainstorms, and it kind of you know impacted a lot of the railway line. And, working with people at Transport Canada, it was a really big focus for them because they were trying to figure out, like, how do we get the, railway back working? But if we can't get the railway back working, what do we do to make sure that we get people back in, get all their goods or something like that to them, so that they're not stuck up in their remote location without access to anything before everything else freezes up.
People are not they. We usually don't think about it like this, but it'll be interesting for your listeners, audience, to just grab a large cup of coffee and think about it.
Hmm.
How do people in the north get their pharmaceuticals, their vegetables, their fruits, access to healthcare? Especially given the fact that permafrost doesn't allow you to have permanent roads, and the roads that we make, winter roads, they're pretty much like band-aid, if you will, that you apply to
Hmm.
some crater in a road in Calgary. The band-aid on a road is not going to stay. So the roads that we get to make, they don't stay. And they cannot take the type of loads, and they're not around the year and all of
Hmm.
those things. And the other part is there is a hidden opportunity in the port of Churchill,
Hmm.
because if we can get our goods from Alberta to Churchill or Manitoba to Churchill, there is a huge opportunity waiting to open up for us in terms of our ability to connect to Europe. Today, our dependence on the
Yeah.
United States is just because, well, North-South trade was easy. We found that to work for us for many, many years. And thanks to the tariffs and the other things that are happening in the world these days, I think there will be a renewed interest in exploring the port of Churchill as a way to connect to Europe.
Definitely. I can tell that already because the amount of conversations I've had over the last just even 5 weeks about that have been very substantial and it's lots of people thinking about those possibilities too. So,
Right.
yeah.
So the diversity piece in our trade was kind of missing, just because any system, business or otherwise, wants to go follow the path of least resistance, if you will.
Yeah.
And we don't fault those systems for doing that. That's how nature works. But we should have been sort of cognizant of something called resilience,
Hmm.
which were found lacking twice in the last few years. Once during the pandemic,
Yeah.
our supply chains were designed for just in time, but they were not designed for just in case.
Exactly. And really relied on just in time because we'd gone from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, that extreme, right?
Yeah.
So the entire premise of our efficient supply chains in the last 30, 35 years has been built on, I know if I want goods from, say, Shanghai coming into China, into Canada, it takes about, say, 29 days. Now that 29 can become 31, 32, or 27, 28, but it's always going to be in that ballpark.
Hmm.
We never could think of a situation where we would not be able to buy or receive what we want when we want. And Dr. Simchi Levy, he's a professor of operations at MIT. He came up with this concept in the early 2000s, actually, and he actually consults as well, and he designed some supply chains, resilient supply chains for Ford, using the concept of time to recover, TTR,
Mm.
time to survive, TTS.
Okay.
He, he actually computed these two for Ford's supply chains to understand what happens if one node in the supply chain goes out of business for a certain number of days.
Hmm.
So we call it a supply chain, but if I had my way, I would call it a supply web. It's
Oh,
not,
totally.
it's not a linear chain, right?
Yeah.
There are all the nodes that are interconnected to each other.
Yeah.
So we started talking about this with Simchi Levy in the early 2000s about resilience in our supply chains, which the pandemic and now the Trump tariffs have forced us to think about for sure.
Fully. But that's a whole other concept just as the light bulb kind of goes on because everything really, in a way, well, everything has a supply chain, but when you put it all together, it does become a web because when you look at like the components of any, like a computer, a phone, and whatever, because everything has their own supply chain, but then they all feed together, it does become a web too.
Think about it like this, that
Yeah.
the jacket that you were wearing, I mean, where did the buttons come from? Where did the
Hmm.
zipper come from? Where did the far come from?
Yeah.
And then all of those products sometimes have to travel to a brand new country where everything gets assembled or stitched or whatever.
Hmm.
There are 6 or 7 countries actually. The other day I was looking at the supply chain for some seemingly simple products and I realized about 8 to 9 countries that are involved,
Fully.
sometimes more,
Yep.
in getting that product together. And it's not a linear flow.
No.
There are products, sub-assemblies, assemblies coming from various countries, and one of them is missing. The entire product is stalled. Think about semiconductors for your cars.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
70% of our semiconductors we never realized were being manufactured in one country in the East.
Hmm.
Well, why? There are certain reasons: good quality and, of course, low cost. But then semiconductors, we never thought that they can stall the manufacturing of an entire car.
Yeah.
So, which they
Right.
did. So, supply chains are now being fully understood, if I can say that safely.
Hmm.
They were not fully understood in the last 30, 35, 40 years.
No.
And we could argue about why or why not, but you see things only when you come to the bridge.
Yeah.
And the first time we hit the bridge was in 2020.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that was definitely the one, like that moment, it really made us fully aware in that resiliency. And then where would you say the other, you said there was two. So where would you say the other
The other
resilient?
one is January 2025,
Hmm.
when, a friend, a neighbor in the south of Canada decided suddenly to say, it's all going to be about I, me, and myself here in and after.
Hmm.
And I shall dictate. We will not go by established norms of global trade.
Yeah.
WTO is practically finished, done and dusted. Tariffs were imposed
Hmm.
left, right, and center. In the morning, you would have one number. In the afternoon, it would go to another number of percentage. By the evening, it would be a totally different news bite. So there is chaos, there is confusion, there is uncertainty, which is
Hmm.
all things that supply chains don't like.
No, exactly. And it's like, it's for those of us in Canada, but it's also, around the world that are feeling that.
Right. And supply chains, I usually talk to my students sometimes about global supply chains, and I say there is no such thing as global supply chains. Supply chains are global.
Hmm.
You don't
Right.
have to have you don't have to have an adjective, preceding the word supply chain. There
Yeah,
is no local
exactly.
supply chain. So it's a very well-oiled system, interconnected entities around the world that we have over decades of
Hmm.
experience and
Yeah.
collaborative work realized that not any economy in the world will have all the right ingredients for a successful supply chain. So why don't we all come together and share our expertise? After the Second World War, this is what we learned,
Hmm.
that we have to work together for success. So global supply chains, I would say let's not have the word global preceding supply chain, prefix to supply chain. Supply chains are global,
Hmm.
and you tinker with one aspect of it on this side of the world, the ripple effect goes all the way and back.
Right. Fully. It and it's all interconnected in ways that we know, in ways that we don't know.
Well, the more you know that you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Fully. And it's all of those pieces too that kind of combine into the wholes. So when did you get to Mount Royal and
Well, that
switch?
was 2016.
Hmm.
I was looking to come closer to family. My
Hmm.
brother's been here for quite a while, and I saw an opportunity here coming from the University of Manitoba with, large classroom sizes, 80s and 90s and whatever.
Hmm.
The Mount Royal model was kind of new for me, British, and
Yeah.
uh, my friend, late Dr. Brian Fleming,
Yeah. Late, great. Yeah. Hmm.
fantastic supply chain professional, fantastic human being. I was so kind of mesmerized, if you will. When I
Hmm.
met him, he was so passionate about not only supply chains, but this program of supply chain management at the Mount Royal University. And he convinced me to move from a traditional R1 university focused on research and whatever
Hmm.
to an undergrad focused, teaching focused institute. And I'm so grateful that I, listened to his advice, because in a smaller classroom, you can work with the students directly and see the change happening there. You know them.
Hmm. You can see the light bulb moments.
That's right. You
Yeah.
know, and you also know their strengths and opportunities as students, as human beings, so you can work with them on a one-to-one basis rather than, just deliver a dry lecture to a classroom of, say, 80 or 90 students.
Hmm.
Those students are sometimes, I feel, are pretty much like a brick in the wall, and they're
Yeah.
not human beings to the instructor. But the Mount Royal model is so unique, and I just love it. And I'm so grateful to Brian to, convince me to come to MRU.
Hmm.
And here I am, almost what, 11 years, 10?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's kind of neat just in small world moments to realize that when I was working with Barry Prentice, you were also working with Barry Prentice, but we didn't know each other then. Yeah,
It's a small world. Yeah, Barry,
exactly.
both of us, it seems, got to work with Barry.
Hmm.
And that was, an experience in learning, in humility.
Hmm.
And I got the same experience and, honor to work with Dr. Brian Fleming. And I'm sure you also worked with Brian.
Very
Uh,
much so. Brian was so passionate about supply chains, but he was also really passionate about students. And I think the true le legacy with Brian is, I've had conversations with multiple students that former students who were just, still, talk about how much he really just cared about everyone. And I think that entire legacy of compassion and interest in getting more people passionate about the industry is what brings a lot of the rest of us forward too.
Absolutely. And whoever sort of, came in contact with Brian has the same sort of
Hmm.
feedback, thoughts about how much he cared for students for the MRU supply chain program. And not only that, I mean, of course, generally as well, he cared about his colleagues and
Hmm.
everybody kind of loved
Yes.
him no ends. So he was a huge role model for many those students that you mentioned.
Hmm.
So he brought me here, and I'm lucky to be, very large shoes to fill in, but I'm trying.
Exactly.
He was a size 13. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I guess that's, part of the piece because I know you've seen the program at Mount Royal evolve and continue to evolve and add in a lot more different labs and different spaces, which is, great to see.
Thank you for reminding me of that. That's another aspect of the supply chain program that we've been fortunate enough to have seen supported. The CN Supply Chain Lab,
Hmm.
Data Analytics Lab, was one of the first things that Brian envisioned, and he led the charge to ensure that we had a supply chain data analytics lab.
Hmm.
I would not hesitate to say this was probably the first ever in, at least in Western Canada, but
Yep.
maybe in Canada, in an undergrad supply chain program where we had a dedicated supply chain analytics lab. And kudos to CN for supporting this early on. I mean, those
Hmm.
were the days when data analytics was not really a big thing as it is today.
Yeah.
And so we set up the CN Supply Chain Analytics Lab under Brian's leadership then. And then thereafter, we continued to grow as a program, and we recently set up the Bison Supply Chain Innovator Initiative.
Hmm.
Bison donated about $250,000 to invest in experiential learning for supply chain students at MRU, where they literally work as director of logistics or director of operations or whatever other roles.
Hmm.
They work with those leaders at Bison while enrolled in a full-time university course,
Oh,
capstone
yeah.
course.
Exactly.
So the students don't have to go there. Their directors and managers and VPs, two VPs, Jamie Burkett and his team, they support the entire thing. So Doug Romanuk, my good friend and senior vice president with Bison. Doug is now senior VP with Mexico, Bison Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I sometimes feel jealous. He gets to sit in Cancun and enjoy the warm weather while we are freezing here. But so we could set up that Bison initiative. Another one that we could set up was in partnership with the large EPC company that we all know, Fluor.
Hmm.
Uh, they're leading the charge for the LNG pipeline project. So they have what is called the Graduate University Scholarship Program, but it is only, as the name implies, for graduate programs in supply chain management.
Hmm.
So the Mount Royal University supply chain program was one of the first ones, and probably is the only one so far, which is an undergrad program, and they support it. So there is 50,000 US that are dollars made available each year
Hmm.
for supporting students' experiential learning.
Yeah.
So all in all, the program has been growing. We have hired a brand new team of full-time faculty colleagues.
Good.
So the program's growing, yeah.
Hmm. No, and that's exactly really neat and one of those kind of extra pieces that are really good to, bring students into and bring other people into the entire area of, you
That's
know.
right. Think about it like this, Bryndis, that the entire concept of
Hmm.
education, is it a parchment or is it knowledge that we want people to memorize and regurgitate, or is it an experience we want to give them before they hit the job market?
Hmm.
So Brian and I and my colleagues, in the program, Dr. Denise Changer and all the wonderful colleagues that I get to work with at MRU, we have always agreed on the value proposition for university to be a place where you experience, you learn,
Hmm.
you make mistakes. It's a safe and inclusive environment where you learn by doing things, not by memorizing things. And I understand that a university has a different mandate, and which is very different from what a vocational institute would have. So, working with industry partners, like Bison or CN or TC Energy, and we got a very strong partnership council
Hmm.
that we meet 3 times a year just to reassess where we are going, what can we do differently. So our industry partners are really invested in us, and they support the constant upgradation or refreshment. I don't know what's the word we should use to
Yeah.
keep it fresh, you know.
Hmm.
And that's the value proposition our students bring because they are really connected to the industry.
Hmm.
They've seen it all, if you will. They've done it in a safe environment. They've made those decisions, if you will, in at university. So they have a better view of what supply chains are.
Yeah.
And that is probably the reason, I'm sure, why industry loves those students, because they can ask the so what questions. As Brian would always say, if your students can ask the so what question,
Hmm.
you are a successful professor.
Yes.
And I totally agree with him always. I've agreed with him. What do you want your students to be? Do you want them to be clones of yourselves? No.
No.
We want them to stay original and share the passion to ask the right questions and make a meaningful difference to whichever organization they go to join. So it's a win-win-win, I guess. Industry gets the right talent pipelines. They are invested early on with universities. I mean, all of these organizations that work with us, they work very closely up almost to the second year, if you will, of the program. Guest lectures, live data sets, real life business problems. So students are literally working on real problems in a way every single day in a classroom.
Oh, completely. So if you were, and you've recently kind of taken the teaching that you've done for students and recently started on LinkedIn and a few other kind of areas doing supply chain or supply unchained, correct? And so if you were to kind of teach someone in Canada or overseas or somewhere around the world of, things of what's happening over the last, it's been a ever evolving, very quick 5 months of 2025. And so if you were to kind of give a few pieces of advice, what would they be?
Excellent. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. I'll go into the genesis of this Supply Unchained
Hmm.
publication that I started on LinkedIn. So I reached out to CBC and to some of the other established partners to share some of my thoughts. But then I realized none of them, or most of them, don't publish op-eds any longer.
Hmm.
And I was searching for a platform to say, how do I communicate my thought to senior managers, younger managers, students, just passionate supply chain professionals. So I started this newsletter, if you will, called Supply Unchained on LinkedIn. And this is where I share some of my thoughts about where we are going. For instance, tariffs are affecting all of us
Yep.
as citizens, as professionals. So all the things that you should know, at least in a simple, meaningful, understandable, bite-size piece, approach. So I share those thoughts on Supply Unchained, my newsletter, and in one of them, I'm sure I think I must have shared this with you sometimes over
Hmm.
coffee or something. I talk about why the uncertainty. Why can, let's say hypothetically, the Trump administration not say, all right, here's the deal. We're going to impose, say, X% of tariffs on whatever the products and the countries and be done with it. Why the constant movement in the goalpost? Why are we constantly changing? One, the logical expression could be that they're not sure of what they're doing, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding has been that, they're doing it on purpose. And there are two concepts that I introduce in one of my articles there. One is called the brinkmanship. Brinkmanship was a concept given by Thomas Schelling. He was a famous economist. And he says brinkmanship is the art of pushing negotiation right to the edge of disaster
Mm.
to extract maximum concessions.
Hmm.
And I sincerely believe there is a little bit of brinkmanship that is currently being done. Trump's strategy leans heavily on this brinkmanship, you know,
Yeah.
to give the signal that I'm willing to go to any extent if you don't listen to me, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that sense, the belief is that people will concede more territory than they would otherwise in a balanced negotiation across the table.
Yeah.
And this is one approach that I thought, The other one is we all have heard about Nixon's madman theory, during the Cold War diplomacy. He used this and he actually shared this with one of his office staff who then later went on to write his memoirs. And
Mm.
he said, Nixon said, I'm going to call this the madman theory.
Mm.
And I'm going to ask you guys to communicate to the adversaries that Nixon's a madcap and he has his hand on the nuclear buttons.
Mm.
So therefore, if you agree, it is safe for everybody. So
Mm.
there is a little bit of
Wow.
madman theory and brinkmanship that is being implied in this constant, chaos. How do negotiations work? Negotiations work that I understand your position and you understand my position, and we try to find out common ground. Now, the aspect of chaos robs you from understanding what am I looking for and how can you prepare your negotiation strategy to come negotiate with me.
Mm-hmm.
So chaos, actually, some economists believe, is a better solution than
Yeah.
structured negotiations,
Yeah.
so that the adversaries are not sure of what strategy should they design to meet your expectations, and they are all constantly moving the goalpost. And in that chaos, people will come up with a less than optimum strategy for negotiation and lose more ground to you just because they were not prepared.
Right.
So these are the types of approaches that I've been trying to explain on why we are where we are. And
Mm-hmm.
why do you see this, a different number in the morning, different number in the evening, and so on and so forth. I guess it's a part of strategy. And I've been trying to articulate this, help it, disseminate my
Mm-hmm.
analysis of the
Yeah.
other piece around the supply chains that I had been espousing the cause for in the last few weeks through my LinkedIn channels is we've had enough of North-South trade. Not
Mm-hmm.
to say we should not continue to negotiate,
Exactly.
we should explore Europe and Asia as well.
Right.
And there is so much more diversity and stability and resilience that comes to our supply chains just because we will decide to stand on our two legs. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot stand on one leg forever.
Yeah. Fully. And making sure that, we've got, and now instead of a one or two-legged stool, maybe we've got a four-legged stool. So
There you go.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Stability is all that businesses need, supply chains need,
mm-hmm.
and chaos works to nobody's benefit.
Yeah.
So far for the last 100 years, let's say hypothetically, things have been working nice for us in Canada just because the southern neighbor never said what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, all of us, I'm sure, were surprised. We thought this is a joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's being said in lighter vein. We will not see those things happen. But then Once they've happened, we know Trump might go in 4 years, but Trumpism might not go.
Right.
And this approach to dealing with friends and neighbors and trade partners and allies might stay.
Hmm.
So we should act fast as a country, not as provinces and whatever. And we should have a unified approach, think of what is resilience for us,
Hmm.
and create newer opportunities for trade wherever possible in the world. And Europe is hungry for energy. Europe is hungry for products. There's so much that we can do. Even currently, we have the CETA agreement with them. We are
Hmm.
not fully utilizing it.
Right. We haven't, fully utilized it. I mean, there's some good examples of spots where we're starting to, but the more we can fully utilize this CETA, the better for sure.
And newer relationships could also evolve with Asia.
Hmm.
You know, Asia is a huge consumer of a whole lot of products if we start manufacturing something. Now, the question with manufacturing usually comes back to, well, the labor costs are high. Agreed. Labor costs are high, but can we reskill, retrain people to work on jobs that require automation and then use automation to be the tool that helps us get established in manufacturing?
Oh yeah.
So there's a whole lot of open space to explore in robotics, automation, in manufacturing that Canada can explore and get into. Sky's the limit. I mean, we don't have to worry about cost. There are so many other ways to bring down costs.
Hmm.
And if you're not producing anything, why would the world need you?
Right.
So what do we produce currently? Let's say hypothetically, you know, of
Hmm.
course, oil and gas energy products are an exceptional blessing that we have in Alberta. But other than that, think about the manufacturing sector. What do we produce? We consume everything. We don't produce as much.
Yeah. And what we do produce, we don't always effectively get it to other markets too. So,
That's right. And the only market that we sent our products to was the southern neighbor, who would do some value added, additions to that product and sell it to the market in Europe at a higher price.
hmm.
Why can we not do that?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
so the supply chain design per se in itself is going through an
Yeah.
evolution, if you will. And this is the time, we should be on top of the wave to make the most of it.
Definitely. For sure. If you were to look at your career and all of the various kind of areas that you've been involved in, if you were giving advice to someone who was entering the industry, which you probably do every day, considering you're a professor, but what advice would you give?
You're right. I give advice every day, but I don't know how many of them listen or hear. Hearing and
Yeah.
listening are two different things. But definitely, I would say don't hesitate to make mistakes. Each mistake that we make, it doesn't define us for sure, but it takes us one step closer to success.
Yes.
Each failure takes you closer to success. If you see success, that is because the person who is successful today that you are emulating or has gone through a series of failures, has
Mm.
gone through multiple setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is one part that I think the younger generation needs to know. It's okay to be not okay. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not make it the first time,
Yeah.
second time, or the third time. Keep going.
Hmm. Good is better than perfect sometimes.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
I think it was Aristotle or somebody, I forget who the person was, who said that perfect is the enemy of good.
Hmm.
So don't try to be perfect. Keep doing things one step at a time. Keep moving. Don't judge yourselves. And failure is okay, because this generation, I realize sometimes they think failure is the end of it all,
Hmm.
and I'm no good.
Right.
There's nobody on the planet who has not failed and failed multiple times. So this is one. And this ties into my philosophy, Brindis, of resilience.
Hmm.
You have to believe in yourselves and keep going. So I think,
Yeah.
and the other part, there is a YouTube video I encourage all your listeners to go look for it called Connecting the Dots by Steve Jobs.
Mm, yes.
You know, whatever little skill you find you can gain in life, keep gaining those skills. They will add up one day. Just
Yeah.
like the little dots in Steve Jobs' life that he, mentions in that video. I don't want to take away the fun part from your
Hmm.
listeners by explaining what he says.
But it's so true. All of those dots lead into moments like even what we're having right now.
Absolutely, there is no linear journey to success.
Hmm.
There is no right or wrong definition of success. The journey itself is success. So grab those opportunities as they come, whenever they come. Raise your hand, show up, stand, and reach out to say, "Can I do this?
Hmm.
Why not me?" You know, and learn and help people. Be passionate about what you're trying to do, and don't do it because you have to do something for a living kind of a thing. And all those things will eventually transform into something very, very powerful and meaningful, not only for you, but for everybody around you.
Hmm.
So I think that's one thing I would leave with youngsters today to say, don't hesitate to fail. Failure takes you one step closer, and be kind to yourselves.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And, I think this is just the start of, I think there's more than a few conversations that we can get into kind of in the future, but this is, I think it was a really good start and a really good way for people to learn a little bit more about how we can be resilient, not only as well within our supply chains, but also within ourselves.
There is a supply chain in all of us as well. We go
Hmm.
from one point to another in our life and journeys. So
Fully. Yeah,
think of that supply chain. Yeah,
exactly. And in a way, I still love, I really love the fact that maybe it's not just a chain, but it's also a web too. So,
it's a web. We are
yeah.
all connected to each other, just the
Hmm.
way the vendors and whatever in the physical world of supply chain are connected. So,
Yeah, fully.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
thank you, Brindis. It's always a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. And thank you for inviting me to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this Zebras to Apples podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed the showcase of the fun and fascinating stories of supply chain logistics. If you liked this episode, I would love it if you could give it a rating and review. For more information about this topic, you can go to zebrastoapples.com or follow Zebras to Apples on the social media platform of your choosing, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn. You can support the show on Patreon. Also, check out the show notes below. Please join me again for another episode of Zebras to Apples. Have a wonderful day.